Interstate 95 is a lifeline along the eastern end of the United States. When a bad truck accident knocked out a bridge near Philadelphia in 2023, a team from the Transportation Department orchestrated an effort that got it replaced in a week and a half. And for their work, Tony Mento, Kalla and Camille Otto of the Federal Highway Administration are finalists in this year's Service to America Medals program. Ms. Otto is Deputy Administrator of the Pennsylvania Division, and she joins me now. Ms. Otto, good to have you with us.
It's wonderful to be here, Tom. Thank you.
And just recreate what happened in the aftermath. As everyone remembers, this tanker truck of gasoline exploded underneath the bridge, and the heat caused the bridge to collapse. What's the process by which the Federal Highway Administration finds out about a thing like this? Or do you just watch TV?
So fortunately for us, we have wonderful relationships with our State Department of Transportation. People know them as PennDOT, as well as the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency. And so we have an electronic system, actually, that when these incidents happen, that we get alerted through email almost immediately. So we were made aware through email and honestly through phone calls from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. Everyone, we have longstanding relationships and cell phones. So immediately calls were being made to all three of us at Federal Highway.
And so state officials, I guess to some extent maybe even city officials and federal officials are standing and looking at a hole in the road with a kind of an embankment on either side. Who's in charge at this point?
To start off, it was actually the National Transportation Safety Board and the Pennsylvania State Police, as well as emergency management agencies, were out because the fire was still ongoing. And as folks may know, there was a gasoline tanker. So that gasoline was still on fire and leaking into the drainage system. So they were on scene to get everything stabilized really before anyone else could access it to take a look at the damage and assess things.
Right. Tell us about the immediate aftermath. Eventually the flames are out. It's probably hot for a long time. When did the Federal Highway Administration kick in, and what did you perceive your role to be once the flames cooled off?
Sure. So even while the fires were still burning, we were communicating with the state DOT and getting things lined up and working on traffic control. But once the fires were out, we had already assembled a team. So we were down in Philadelphia and were on site actually the next day on Monday to start assessing and working on a plan to get the bridge reopened.
And did you see the site yourself?
I did not on the first day. When we were able to access it, I stayed back to manage some of the traffic control and all of the coordination efforts. And I sent my senior bridge engineer, Jonathan Buck, as well as my lead for engineering so that they could be down on site to really look at the technical aspects of it and provide PennDOT with the best advice technically that we could as quickly as possible.
Right. So the issue then is how far the damage goes beyond what you can see, such that you know that whatever you attach back is going to stay up, just to put it in simple terms.
That's exactly correct. So we knew immediately that the northbound lane had actually collapsed, but we were not sure about the condition of the southbound lane as well as some of the abutments. So immediately everyone was looking at those to determine, what was their status, and it was identified that the southbound lanes would also have to be replaced. So from that point, then we could look at what else needed to be done to get that removal going and move forward with a plan.
Yes, sort of. It was standing by habit, the one way, and the other one had collapsed completely. It was gone.
Exactly.
All right. We're speaking with Camille Otto. She's Deputy Administrator of the Pennsylvania Division of the Federal Highway Administration, also a Service to America Medals finalist this year. What happens then once the damage is finished happening and the traffic is rerouted? You've got this hole. And what about, how do you get going next? You need contracts, you need contractors, you need assessments. Tell us about the process.
Sure. So the first thing to look at was what type of alternatives do we have? Fortunately, we had done work on this bridge not too long ago. PennDOT sprang into action and we looked at design plans, what type of materials we can get and how quickly you can get them. We were very fortunate that a contractor was nearby, so he sprang into action and their group was able to do the removal within a few days, while PennDOT and Federal Highway were actively working on what can we do to get a temporary repair up and running. And fortunately, we had some very innovative solutions for, as you know, the lightweight glass aggregate fill, which is local to a Delaware County group. So we were able to gather all that information very quickly, even while the contractor was doing removal, and come up with a design plan. So it really took a large effort on behalf of multiple agencies, both local, state, and federal, and the private sector, to kind of come up with some innovative solutions quickly.
Yes, how was it bridged in 12 days, even though that wasn't the permanent bridge, but enough that it could handle, and let's face it, a lot of trucks go over 95, on 95 every day, so it had to bear some real weight and wear and tear.
Absolutely. So we were fortunate in the fact that we were not over water, which allowed us some extra leeway in innovative solutions. So what they ended up doing was placing this fill within sort of cages, from a layman's term, and compacting it layer by layer with this glass aggregate that PennDOT has done lab testing on in the past, and Federal Highway has done testing as well. So we knew what this product was based on some of those innovative technology testing that had previously been done. And they just layered and compacted, and you can watch on the video as they continued to build it up and up and up until they could put the paved surface on the top.
In other words, they had to span something.
Correct.
And what they had to span it with was this material compressed that could stand up for that distance across the lanes of the road below.
Exactly. So they were spanning over a ramp, an off-ramp to the interstate, so they were able to fill that space with this aggregate. Had that been water, it would have required a different solution. So like I said, this was very innovative to use this to span that, to get a temporary solution, to open that back up to traffic, including trucks. And so the lab testing was key to know that this would be able to carry that kind of weight.
Yeah, and so in some ways, the technology and the mechanisms administratively to have this were already in place, you might say.
Exactly correct. So we have our innovative councils and our Everyday Counts initiative, and this was included in some of those things. So that advanced innovation testing was very key to making this successful.
Sure. And what is happening next then? Because that fill material is in there, but that's not intended to be the permanent solution. And, you watch roads get built and you wonder why it takes them 6 months to pave a mile or something somewhere. Anyone that drives along road construction. So what's next to make it permanent, this fix?
So the fix is actually permanent now. So we had done the temporary fill. And while they had that done, they were actually able to get the steel beams and build the outside portions of the bridge while people ran on the inside in the fill. Once that was done, which was late last fall, they began pulling out the fill. And once the fill was out, they could build the inside of the bridge while the traffic was running on the outside. So as of May 23rd, so last month, they were able to complete all of that, and one lane of the Cottman ramp is back and restored. So everyone is back and running on a fully restored version of I-95. And the only remaining work is really to do one more lane of Cottman Avenue on the off-ramp and put a few more safety features. So we're going to have some high friction surface to help vehicles navigate the curve, and some additional signing as well, just to warn.
Yes, as someone who spends a lot of time on two wheels, I like the idea of a high-friction surface for the curves. And a couple of questions then. Did you, after removing the fill material, are you evaluating it to see how it withstood approximately a year of temporary use, just to see what happens?
So they were able to look at it before they even removed it. So it performed adequately. And additionally, I would assume some of that testing data will obviously go back to Federal Highway for future uses as well.
Yeah, because glass fill sounds like something that could be an abundant commodity to make stuff out of that could be put in maybe permanently in some places.
So we do have some of this permanently in place on some projects, typically, I believe, in some interchange slopes and things. So this is actually being used already in other areas. Are
there any lessons learned from bridges where, in this case, it wasn't 95 where the crash occurred, but underneath 95 and the flames went up to 95, if I'm describing it right? Is there any alterations to bridges that could be promulgated so that if another tanker blows up, the bridge won't melt.
We have looked at some of that information. Of course, the amount of heat coming from a gasoline fire is